Good morning to everybody. Welcome to Bharat 3's Speak series of webinars. I welcome all the participants for this excellent knowledge sharing session. We'll be starting the session now. The context of today's webinar is corporate India has been going through various challenges in the business. Of course, the environment has been changing. All of us are aware of how COVID shutdown has impacted business organizations for the past several months world over. There's nobody on the planet who's not been impacted. When it comes to corporates, they have different risk exposures in how they run the business, and that risk exposure being there, the ultimate fallback for a business person or a entrepreneur is their well-defined insurance program. In spite of having focused on the insurance program and carefully designing the cover, there could be surprises and roadblocks for the corporates. Today we'll be discussing 3 case studies as to how corporates faced surprises in their claims. These cases are real cases which our experts will be sharing with you today. And the backdrop of this is the insurance being against fortuitous, unexpected events, and with as much preparation on the ground, providing risk mitigations, and by choosing the relevant insurance covers, what kind of surprises a business owner or an entrepreneur or an ongoing entity will be facing is what we'll be discussing. I'm very happy to present to you our experts today. Mr. M. Ramdas, former CMD of Oriental Insurance and New India Assurance, veteran in the insurance industry and currently advisor to Shriram Group and on the insurance business, and also to Bharat 3. He's got a vast experience, including international experience from the London market. Ramdas will be sharing with you a case and certain insights into what kind of impact the claim process had because of the surprise. We also have Mr. S. Ramesh, electrical engineer with more than 40 years experience. He started his career in New India Assurance, had worked in the Gulf market, had been energy practice head for Tata AIG more than 10 years, and has been technical director of Bharat 3. He also has immense survey and loss adjustment experience. He'll also share with us certain insights into what could be the perspective of how a surveyor or loss adjuster would have seen this claim and why this kind of challenge has come. I am Arunachalam. I started my career with New India Assurance as a direct recruit officer with 7 years further experience in IFCO Tokyo. And for the last 13 years with the Shriram Group and Bharat 3. I'll be presenting a case as to what was my experience handling a surprise turn or a twist in an insurance claim. So it's going to be an interesting session. I'm very thankful for the time and attention of as many participants. I heartily welcome everybody. Bharat 3 is running this Speak series of seminars to share with the market, with our customers and prospects and other interested participants, our experience and knowledge in having handled the insurance program, the claims management, and the typical complications that might come handling these 2 areas. We're very happy to share this with our participants today. We'll start the session. We have a presentation show, and I'll be on your behalf. I'll be seeking clarifications from the 2 experts. We'll start the session now. I'll start the presentation. I request Mr. Ramdas to start with the session. Meanwhile, I'll start the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the seminar. I'm happy to be present here to discuss some of the important issues in handling the claims. With my background of public sector insurance companies, wherein we issue more than 1 crore policies per annum, we all assumed that at least 1 crore policy holders who had got the policy can sleep in peace, assuming that in the case of a catastrophe or in the case of an accident, their loss will be compensated by the insurance companies. When I have come to the other side of the table, now I understand that there are many issues when actually the promise which is held on the paper called the insurance policy is tested at the time of a claim. There are many cases when the insureds face a lot of difficulties in not only getting the time in claim in time, but also not adequately compensated. Every major claim at least, there seems to be a problem, especially in the fire and engineering departments. I have personally experienced some of the difficulties of the clients. There are two issues when the claim comes. Why there is a big disappointment or the not satisfied client as far as claim settlement is concerned is mainly because one, the policy coverage may be wrong. So technically the insurance company may be right in reducing the claim or avoiding the claim or refusing the claim. For that, the insurance company, insurance policy should be quite comprehensive to cover all possible risks and also cover all the assets which are exposed to the risks of the client. So therefore, at the time of taking the policy also, apart from depending on the insurance company's advice regarding the policy to be taken, it is better to take a technical advice from an outsider who can advise the clients properly, especially the bigger clients, to see that they are comprehensively covered for all the claims. So there are umpteen number of cases wherein the policies are drafted, policies are issued wrongly, and then the client also accepts, which puts the claim in a jeopardy when the actual incident happens. The second thing is when the policy is also correct, but the insurance company expects the insured to prove the loss adequately, not only the quantum but also the how it is arrived at as early as possible. All the major people who have faced the claims can say that insurance company as well as insurance surveyors go on asking a lot of documents, and after that takes a lot of time. At the end of the day, that is after a long time also, they say that adequate information has not been provided, therefore insurance claim is not proved to their satisfaction, and therefore the claim amount is reduced. So these are all very common excuses, and this comes to a question, this comes to a point wherein what do we do when there is a major claim? So even though the policy is correct, but if the claim, at the time of claim, we have to be very comprehensively presenting the claim papers and the claim amount and prove the claim to the surveyor and the insurance company. This is a very paramount important. So I'm just presenting one case wherein the policy was right. The insured has been taking the fire policy for a long time, the same insurance company. But at the time of loss, the insurance company has not settled the claim, and how the insured, along with our advice, were able to fight the case and present the claim in a much better manner. Therefore, the claim was ultimately paid by the insurance company. So let us go to the presentation. This is the case of one windmill which has collapsed in 2018. We'll go to that presentation and then we'll discuss the claim.
Thank you, Mr. Ramdas. Before we go to the presentation, I'll take 2 minutes to request Mr. Ramesh to give an introductory statement for 2 minutes so that it can set the tone for today's discussion. Ramesh.
Yeah. Having been in the industry on a 360-degree basis, working from the insurance company, working as a surveyor loss adjuster, and also working on behalf of the clients, and also part of the brokerage firm like Bharat Re, I have come across a lot of instances where there are some misconceptions on the role and responsibility of various stakeholders in the whole game of insurance. Now, coming to the claim settlement process itself, one of the major links is the surveyor and loss adjuster, and who is not present at the time of contracting an insurance policy. So he comes in from nowhere only when there is a claim lodged on the insurance company. So what is the role and responsibility of a surveyor? How does a surveyor is supposed to bring about let us say a conducive settlement between the two contracting parties? And what are the roles and responsibilities and the code of conduct, and all these things we can discuss during the course of this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. Now we'll go to the presentation. I'm sharing the presentation.
So this is, as I told you, this is the case of a windmill collapse in Teneri district in 2018 of the client. A huge windmill, it has totally fallen down. It becomes a total loss. You know, the sum insured of the windmill was around 12 crores or so, and became a total loss. So this is a picture of the windmill which has collapsed. It's an actual picture, actual loss. One or two pictures are there. Next one is also the entire tower has collapsed, and therefore it is total loss. Now we come to the question how it falls. The collapse of the windmill is because the failure of the control panel of the blades. See, as you know that the windmill, the blades rotate, and then from the wind, they generate the electricity, which is passed on to the grid. The blades are controlled by the control panel on the top of the tower behind the blades. And the control panel is powered by the power connection from the grid, that is a regular TNEB connection. And also they have a battery bank behind the, in the control panel. In case the power failure is there, the power from the battery bank will immediately switch on within few seconds. So therefore, there is virtually uninterrupted power supply to the power control panel. And this has been, the windmill has been functioning for about 70, 80 years without any problem and duly maintained properly. Absolutely, there's no maintenance issues as such. But one day, on the fateful day, the power grid failed. It has failed many times, and wherein the power from the battery has been, backup battery has been picking up the power, and control panel has been controlling. But in this particular day, the grid power failed, and also the battery bank also failed, which resulted in the uncontrolled rotation of the blades. So blades, once they rotate without any control, with great speed, that results in the collapse of the entire tower, and then therefore the entire windmill is a total loss. Then the surveyor comes, he comes and surveys, goes through all the details. He checks the control panel, and then he has been given complete logbooks, everything is there. And then he is told that there is a lack of power supply from the battery bank, which has caused the control panel to break down, and therefore the control panel failed, which failed to control the blades rotation, which resulted in the collapse of the tower. Therefore, he said that battery bank did not supply the power because there is a breakdown in the battery. And breakdown is a mechanical breakdown. Therefore, the insured has been taking only the fire policy. Therefore, this breakdown is not covered. That was the conclusion of the surveyor. But he did not get any technical examination of the battery done. He assumed, because he says, I am a very seasoned surveyor, I know that this could be only a breakdown. There cannot be any fire in the battery. And therefore, he did not even think of assuming that fire could be a cause for this collapse. And when the tower fell down, there are some fire escaped, burnt some of the cables down in the ground control panel. He allowed those claims. So as against a claim of around 8-9 crores, he passed something like 50-70 lakhs or so about the cable cost, which is burnt in the ground. And he concluded, and the insurance company also simply transferred the claim amount. The unfortunate thing was there was no discussion between the insured and the surveyor also. Then we took up the matter to prove that whether there is a possibility of a fire loss rising out of this. Then we had the batteries examined by the battery expert, who said that yes, the battery banks have ruptured, and there is an explosion which has caused the rupturing of the battery bank and the outside shell. And probably because of the leaked hydrogen from the batteries, a spark might have caused this explosion, and that has resulted in the entire rupture and all. Unfortunately, fortunately to that extent, surveyor did not get to know the details. He simply assumed, he just gave one paragraph saying that as per my experience, this is only a breakdown of battery, therefore not covered. We took the extra pains of examining the battery and also establishing that even though there is no soot mark or anything, this is a hydrogen explosion which doesn't create a flame or soot mark, and therefore you cannot rule out the fire aspect. Then we could, this was proved subsequently when the matter went to the arbitrator. We said that this is the cause of the fire. The fire in the battery led to the failure of the battery's power supply to the control panel, which in turn did not control the blade's rotation, which resulted in the collapse of the tower. So we are able to establish satisfactorily to the arbitrator that the proximate cause was a spark and the fire in the battery, which resulted in the collapse of the tower, which is covered under the fire insurance policy. So this is typically a case wherein a proximate cause, which is a proximate cause as per the textbook definition of a proximate cause, one cause which led to a train of events which ultimately resulted in the loss, we are able to successfully prove in this case, which is not very easy. And because we took the help of an expert and then put a lot of efforts into that, and when it was argued before the arbitrator, he was convinced about the argument, and especially the fact that we could take an expert opinion instead of depending on a general feeling or general experience of the surveyor. So this is one thing wherein we feel that even after the there's another important factor was after the 2 years also we got the batteries examined. There was little small voltage coming in the power or in the battery, which proved that there's not a breakdown. There cannot be a short circuit or anything like that, wherein the battery is not at dead even after 2 years. All these things we could prove and then we could win the claim. And the claim was ultimately, the award was given for more than 6-7 crores for the client. So this is one case where I want to say that wherein the insured has to present the case, satisfy the claim to the insurance company as well as the surveyor, and they have to take an extra step of proving the loss, if necessary, engaging the expert opinion as well as the OEM observations and things like that. So this, I only say that this can happen only when there is an expert advice available to you at the time of a claim. And many more cases are like that. And this is one thing which is an eye-opener, at least in future. People should be very careful when handling the claim, especially bigger claims, to prove the cause of the loss as well as the quantum of the loss. I hope a technical advice of insurance broker or a claim consultant will be of great help. Unfortunately, which has to happen normally by an insurance company, is not happening now. And insured is better served if there is an expert opinion available to him at the time of a claim. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramdas. Very, very interesting case. Totally unexpected for the customer. It can take a turn like this, and definitely the involvement of advisors and insurance brokers could have helped. But I have a very important question to ask. A lot of corporates in India totally trust their insurer. Some of them have been with the insurer for decades. Even I know corporates who have been with the same insurer for 5 decades. They would say that we have never changed our lawyer ever over generations. We don't change our chartered accountant. We don't change our doctors. Likewise, we don't change our insurer. That's the kind of total trust a customer would have, especially a corporate would have on their insurer. Now, did that relationship or trust come into play? Would it? Why it didn't come into play in this case? A technical problem like this completely overrate relationship from the perspective of an insurance advisor to large insurance companies, having led insurance companies. What's your viewpoint, sir? Why did relationship didn't come to the fore?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know that even in New India, we used to respect the clients, and there are good old days wherein just because the relationship, people used to get the claim settled, even on ex gratia basis. If there is a primary coverage is not in the company, in the policy. But of late, I think what's happening is people are more going by the technical wording, and then unless it is legally correct to pay the claim, and PSU employees as well as officers are wary of taking a judgmental decision about based on relationship and things like that. So therefore, it is more, it is invariably, whether it is a private company or public sector company, it is purely based on legality of the policy. If they are legally liable to pay, they will pay. That is, even private companies are taking it. PSU companies have to necessarily take that view, mainly because of this vigilance and other issues, wherein nobody wants to take extra mile to decide based on personal relationship. I don't think it is happening. I don't think it will happen also. I mean, I feel even my international experience, there are many, very few cases where based on relationship is settled. Mostly people stick to the wordings in the policy. And therefore, it is paramount important to have a very correctly worded policy and very comprehensively covered policy.
I have a question to Mr. Ramesh. From the technical point of view, you spent decades and decades looking at insurance events from the technical side. There are stakeholders in every insurance transaction. As long as it's a business insurance placement, it's just the insurance companies, the insurance broker, and the customer. But when it comes to a claim, there is a new stakeholder, a new actor in the whole scene, which is the insurance surveyor. My question to you, sir, this particular claim hinged upon proving that the loss was not just a fire, not just a breakdown, it was due to a fire. It was possible to establish this because of an involvement of an expert who is an expert in the business of batteries, the operation of batteries, how batteries might catch fire. So the involvement of an expert was necessary in this case to get the claim admitted. Now, can the insured expect that this could have been the job of a surveyor? A surveyor is tagged as an independent surveyor. It is expected he plays a neutral role. Was it the job of a surveyor to get a subject matter expert? In this case, it's a battery. Maybe in another case, it may be a chemical in which the chemical reaction should have been investigated. Is it incumbent upon an insurance surveyor and loss adjuster to have brought in this expert? Why did it have to be the insured or the insurance broker to do this?
Yeah, it's a very, very, very pertinent question in today's scenario. As you know, with a lot of changes in the Insurance Act and the insurance scene itself in India, so there are certain important roles and responsibilities cast upon various stakeholders in the whole insurance program or insurance business itself. And the surveyor and the loss adjusters are many of them, who are licensed by all of them are licensed by the regulator based on their own competence and their eligibility criteria and a variety of things. And based on that, the surveyors and loss adjusters are expected to follow certain guidelines and certain responsibilities and what we call this code of conduct, which are prescribed under the Act. So, for instance, these things are enshrined very well in, if you refer to Insurance Act 1938 and further amendments, essentially in sections 42D and section 64 UM and 114A. So, these are the sections which deal with the subject of the surveys and loss adjusters. And coming to the latest legislation of IRDA Act 1999, if you refer to section 14 and section 26, so the role and responsibilities, the code of conduct and the professional duties of a surveyor are very well defined. Now, based on that, it is expected of a loss adjuster to carry out a survey, verification and review of the claim presented by the insured to the best of his ability within the four walls of the contract of insurance, and then interpret in a normal professional way whether what is the nature and extent of damage that has been caused, whether this prima facie comes under the four walls of the policy, and then what to the extent to which the policy should respond in terms of the quantum of the claim. So coming to the onus of proof, as you said in this instant case, it is primarily contractually the responsibility of the policyholder claimant under a variety of sections of the insurance policy, if you refer to that. It says that the policyholder or a claimant can employ a variety of methods and tools to prove his loss, it could be in the form of, sorting it, segregating it between damaged and undamaged items, sorting out the properties to explain exactly the nature of damage, the plans, the documents, the books of accounts, the vouchers, the invoices, the purchase bills, and even statutory filings, copies of GSTs and income tax filings. And also, the insured is empowered to use as evidence the internal and external investigation reports, which are technical in nature, which could be of any particular requirement for a particular claim. And all these variety of proofs and evidences can be presented to the surveyor, and any knowledgeable loss adjuster who is competent for the particular job for which he is assigned can certainly discern with a professional eye whether this falls under the policy, and if it does, to what extent the policy should respond and stuff like that. So therefore, it is primarily, in my opinion, the responsibility of the policy holder to establish the proof of loss beyond a reasonable doubt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramesh. It's been a very interesting case that the cause of loss went into challenge, and based on the support given by the insurance broker, the customer was able to establish the cause of loss, and then the claim was able to conclude. Now I'd like to request Mr. Ramesh share his case, maybe an introductory statement about the background of the case study, and possibly we'll discuss the case further. We are waiting to hear from you, Mr. Ramesh.
Gentlemen, thanks for the opportunity. This is a case of a cyclone claim of a customer who is a very steadfast policy holder for a particular insurance company for over a decade, and having had a very close relationship with the officials, of course, with the different officials, different points of time for the same company. And they have established a new, export-oriented unit in a place where the cyclone devastated their properties, their assets, and their business. And arising out of it, they had to make a claim. That was the first time they faced a claim over a period of 10 years. And they had to contend with the surveyor, they had to contend with the variety of insurance contractual obligations and a variety of stuff like that. And at that point of time, they found that the policy itself played foul in getting their valid, legitimate claim settled. So I will go into the presentation and explain to you how this happened. And it is not a very complicated technical issue, but unfortunately, it's a very, very simple issue on which the claim was not considered. Now, just to give a background of this company, this company is manufacturing medical devices of international standards with exports to about 100 countries. And the revenue itself is about 700 crores, out of which the profit after tax is something like 250 crores. So you can see the extent of value addition and the expertise involved in the manufacturing plant of this nature. And also it's a public limited company. The market cap was something like close to about 500 crores. And the EPS itself has risen 15 times over a period of 10-15 years of their existence, because they have been professionally very competent in this business. And they had about 350 employees to support the business. So next, if you see the building, the next slide, please. If you see the building, this is the building in which they were operating. And this is essentially a multi occupancy building in which a variety of tenants are allowed to operate from here. The insured had about 5 sheds in this building, 3 of them in the first floor and 2 of them in the second floor. So this is a building which was damaged by the floods. And over a period of time, if you see, they started the business in this place in 2007 with the shed number A. They expanded to shed number B in the year 2008. And the subsequent year, they added 2 more sheds, shed number C in the first floor and shed number D on the second floor. And 2011, they had shed number E. So with all these expansion plans complete, the company was going leaps and bounds and producing indulging their manufacturing activities, and they were expanding on their turnover. And the policy itself, unfortunately, was not keeping pace with the progress of the company. If you see, the policy itself was covering initially in 2007, it covered shed number A as a description of the risk location. And the subsequent renewal the insurance company and the insured made sure that the shed number B was also included. And subsequently, the description remained static. Though the sum insured had grown by leaps and bounds from 25 lakhs from inception to 275 crores just before the cyclone. And the shed numbers A and B were marked, but the C, D, E, where the majority of the stocks were held, were not mentioned in the policy. Very unfortunately, it was escaped the attention of the insured. The officer who was servicing from the insurance side, servicing the client, as well as the bankers who had taken a policy as a collateral and then filed them away in their books. And subsequently, when the cyclone struck, the surveyor took a stand saying that the policy covers only shed A and B, and shed C, D, and E are not a part of the policy contract. So we are constrained to assess only the loss pertaining to shed A and B, which stand covered in the policy specifically, and other things cannot be subject matter of assessment. So the surveyor took a stand like that, which was ratified by the insurance company subsequently. And based on that, the surveyor had allowed a claim of 50 lakhs as against 100 crores. The loss claimed by insured was 100 crores. As against that, the shed A and B, the damage assessed was only about 50 lakhs. So this was a very, very tragic situation where the insured could not really take any help from the relationship or prove anything from their side because of the simple lapse in the policy, which did not encompass all the locations of the risk where the sum insured was declared in the policy. So that is the case, Mr. Arun.
Thank you, sir. Again, a very interesting case where there was an assumption in the mind of the customer. Number one, as in the previous case, there's been a long relationship with the insurance company, more than a decade long. Complete trust on the person who represented the insurance company that everything has been reviewed and properly taken care of, including the description and the values. This trust came into test this particular case. First question to Mr. Ramdas. Mr. Ramdas, sir, as a mentor and advisor to insurance companies, if a customer had been placing this business with a particular insurer for more than a decade, there is a false sense of hope. In this case, it turned out to be a false sense of hope. The person representing the insurance company, he has been visiting them so often, he has been engaged with them for every renewal. All information required has been given to them. Customer hoped and believed that everything is all right about the insurance cover. The insurance company, having considered the lifetime value of this customer to them, having paid lakhs and lakhs of premium, the insurance company have overlooked very small, from the customer point of view, a small error in just describing the locations in the policy. Address or locations, in some cases door number, in some cases survey number, the address as described in the policy, that was an error. Should that be cause enough for declining a claim? That was a major claim. Really tested the survival of the customer. The insurance company have overlooked this and gone forward to settle the claim. That kind of fairness would have been expected from the customer or anybody who is hearing this story. From the insurance company point of view, what would have been the perspective?
See, that's what I say. I mean, this is a normal perception, this is a normal feeling a person has. But unfortunately, as at least in the fire policy is very location-specific policy, and people are very, very clear that unless the location is clearly mentioned in the fire policy, it will not be covered. I understand. I mean, I just note of in the Q&A also, TVS Motors, for somebody from TVS Motors, Hosur has raised the same problem, saying that if just there is a clerical error in not mentioning the particular address in the policy, why can't the company honor the long relationship and pay the claim and things like that? So as I explained earlier also, that at least PSU companies would not be able to go beyond the policy terms and conditions and then go by the relationship to settle the claims. And I have also come across, there are many court judgments as well as the consumer forum cases, wherein if there is a mistake in the address, if the address is not specifically mentioned, even those courts and consumer firms have not upheld the rights of the insured just because they have been insuring that way, they have been insuring for a long time like that. Unless the location is very clearly, specifically mentioned there and without any ambiguity. There are cases where generally understood address is one thing and suddenly some other number comes and then therefore that's also noted by the insurance company as per the surveyor, and they say that this is not what exactly is the specified location as far as this particular risk is concerned. That becomes a disputable point. Then courts and legal forums have held that what is mentioned specifically in the policy is the only thing which is covered. So therefore, to answer your question, that it is extremely difficult to pay a policy, pay a claim where the address is not specifically mentioned in the policy, and even if it is a long relationship and just been there like that for a long time, and even there are cases even the insurance company comes and inspects the premises also. But if there is a possibility of interpretation of the policy in a different different location, it is difficult to pay the claim legally by the insurance company. Only way out, according to me, is at least as far as PSUs are concerned, they can go to the board and ask for an ex gratia payment, which also has got some specific criteria by which it has to follow. And off late, the ex gratia payments are very, very minimum. My experience is. So I would say that today the entire insurance company is again, insurance world is going by the contract terms and specifications, which is what any other commercial world also would go like that. And it is very, very important to have these specifications clearly checked up when the policy comes, at least address location. If there is anything else in the description of the claim, I mean, description of property like plant and machinery is discussed as tools or something like that, there could be some small variation in the interpretation can be assigned. But the location, address location is very, very important, and it will be difficult for the companies to alter that particular situation.
In the experience of Bharat 3, having been a risk management advisor and broker to corporates, and in my personal experience, I've seen possibly this is not the only area where the trouble could be. It may be even in the description of the subject matter insured, frequently disputes relating pavements and compound wall and landscaping. Corporates do end up losing money because of this interpretation issues. Even assets not properly described, certain investments done, not reflected in the description, have been cases where this kind of challenges would have come. So, Mr. Ramesh sir, I have a question for you.
Yes, please.
What could have prevented this? Who could have prevented this? If this could have been totally avoided, whose responsibility could it have been? Is it the insured? Should they have reviewed, or is it the responsibility of a broker? In this case, they didn't have a broker. Do you think a broker could have contributed by being a reviewer or auditor of the policy advice that the risk on the ground, irrespective of number of locations, irrespective of what different activities the customer may have, he may have activity A in one location, activity B in another location. These are the typical problems we have seen. The risk on the ground not properly being reflected, values not properly reflected. Who could have eliminated? Was it the responsibility of the insurance company having related to this customer, especially from the background there was no intermediary? Was there a burden on the insurance company to have paid attention to this? Or was it the responsibility of the insured, being the customer, be a tempter, buyer beware? Should they have been reviewing this? What could have prevented this, sir? As a surveyor and loss adjuster, how you would have seen this? Kiski galti hai?
See, to be very honest, I would say I would take shelter under the adage, prevention is better than cure. It's always better to prevent or preempt a certain unfortunate event from taking place by prudent measures of ensuring that the policy is properly cast, the contracting parties understand each other's requirements, and then define all those intentions transcribed properly in the policy without ambiguity, and the policy is not wanting in terms of basic information like even the location, the address, the legal address of the entity, and a variety of stuff. So I would say that this is from a moral ground, I would say that everybody is responsible in the complete game of insurance. But legally speaking, it is a responsibility of the insured to ensure that the policy is properly vetted. If required, they can take the help of professionals like licensed insurance brokers who essentially represent the interests of the policyholders, according to law.
Would that responsibility slightly shift back to the insurance company? As Mr. Ramdas mentioned, if they have done an inspection, let's say 6 months back or 3 months back, just before the renewal, inspection report contained the correct addresses, correct occupancies, and the policy contract was issued with this kind of deficiencies, do you think the responsibility might shift back to the insurance company?
It was quite possible. As I said, the moral responsibility is on the part of all the stakeholders, and if the insurance company had probably taken cognizance of the build-up, a huge build-up of value at risk in this particular location, they could have very well arranged for a risk inspection, which should have thrown out all the facts of the case, the the address, locations, and all the activities, and entire risk profile could have been captured and mapped. And then even if the policy had not reflected it, at least they had the information prior to the incident having taken place. It was quite possible that they could have condoned those clerical lapses and then settled the claim. But in the particular case which I highlighted, there was no inspection done, unfortunately, because it is not a legal obligation to carry out inspection.
Arun, I would like to say one more point that
yes,
if there has been a representation from the insured company, insured to the insurance company, that this is the way I want the policy to be issued. And then if the policy has been issued wrongly, and there is a window open for the insurance company to pass a post-loss endorsement and then settle the claim. That is happening, that is possible even in a PSU insurance. For instance, if there is an RIV class attached to the policy for 2 years, and third year by clerical mistake it was omitted, and fourth and that year there is a claim, and the insurance companies can trace back the history and then pass the endorsement after the loss and then settle the claim. So that possibility is there. So there must be enough evidences to show that there was a representation, that was the intention, and the insurance company failed to do that. Then insurance company should be convinced to pass an endorsement of that, which they have a long procedure of doing it. They are convinced they can do it.
I'm sure such instances would have been there in the past, but I have a pointed question to you, Mr. Ramdas, sir. Having been on the side of insurers, this willingness, this possibility of post-loss endorsement, the willingness and keenness to do that after a loss, would that differ depending on the size of the claim? If it's a 10 lakh rupee claim, I'll do it willingly. If it's a 1 crore, lot of pull and push. If it's a 10 crore or 100 crore claim, it is impossible. Will that be the scenario?
No, unfortunately, that is a personal now happening. At least I have got a personal experience of passing some endorsements where the after the loss, where the insured is justified because they have represented properly, and then it was the insurance companies, our branch or divisional office did a mistake in issuing the policy wrongly. I have enabled passing the thing, and it is not dependent on the money. In bigger claims also we have passed post-loss endorsements and settled claims. And there are certain authorities. If there is a bigger claim, you have to go to the board to get it approved. And as long as everyone is satisfied, and this is possible. If there is a real intention and it is purely the insurance company's mistake, this possibility is there.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Having seen two cases which are quite interesting, they are different from each other, but they do reflect the challenges a customer will face when they want to look at their financial losses to be indemnified by insurance companies on insurance contracts on which they have spent money, they have given due consideration in terms of paying premium, and having taken so much of care, still challenges can be there. The third case that I'll be sharing with you is much different. It's in the context of a marine cargo insurance. In this case, the customer is a supplier of IT hardware. They are turnkey contractors who supply hardware for large corporates like banks or financial institutions, insurance companies, for creating their IT assets, both possibly within the head office or corporate office, or even creating data center or disaster recovery centers. That's the job the customer, that's the business of the customer. and they import a substantial quantity of their item. They import from global major IT manufacturers, frequently from Southeast Asia. In this case, it was a shipment of servers. It was a stack of servers in which hard disks are already embedded, stacked, and they came in the customary packing. Usually, these kind of items are properly packed based on industry norms and standards. Obviously, the customer engages, customers like them always engage logistics companies who are experienced in handling this kind of consignments. But still accidents do happen, damages do occur. In this case, when the equipment was received at the location where it was to be installed, the sensitivity of this case is the end user is one of the government agencies. So when the system reached and it was opened up for installation, the installation was to be done in the presence of the supplier's engineers. The supplier's engineer and the customer's representative found scratches and dents on the outer casing. Immediately they informed the relevant authorities. Of course, customer was informed, and the supplier's engineer, when they inspected, they found that this is clearly damage which occurred during the transit or handling. This is possibly accidental. It may happen, maybe a jolt on the container or whatever be the reason, damage had occurred. So the surprise is not about the consignment being damaged. The surprise was about how the independent surveyor and the insurer, how they viewed it. When the surveyor inspected the server at the site, he advised, as any other surveyor would have done it, he advised the supplier's engineer to power it up. That means connect it to the power point and then bring in the power and then switch it on. When that effort was done, the server showed LED indicator lights. That means power was coming, the server was powered on, but it did not boot. Obviously, it's a computer. It's supposed to boot, and then there has to be a boot screen appearing in the monitor. That didn't happen. So there is clearly a malfunction that was identified, and possibly repairs were required. The problem was the surveyor and the insurer were indicating that maybe you change a few components, this could be working. This machine could be working if you repair it, replace certain components. The customer was taken aback. They of course looked at the supplier to tell them what they should be doing. The supplier took a position that merely the system powering on does not mean it is going to work. It may, even with minor efforts, it may come up, but we are not able to certify that it will work for the duration of whatever period they are going to give warranty. So they told, if you try repairing it as a supplier, we will not be able to give warranty to this. We can't warranty the performance, let's say for 1 year or 3 years, whatever be the length of warranty the manufacturer or supplier would have given. So they took a stand that if you try repairing it, we are not going to repair it. We are advising you as a supplier, this is repairable, but may not perform the way it should perform. And we are not going to give warranties. The stalemate that came was the insurer and surveyor took a position, it is repairable. It will be a repair basis marine cargo claim. The supplier said this is not to be repaired, it should be replaced, and they are not going to give warranty. The insured was stuck. Insured in this case is the IT hardware supplier who was supplying to a state government agency. They were in a fix because their customer will not accept a repaired machine in place of a brand new machine. No customer will accept it. So that's a kind of context this claim had. It was forces pulling at each other. Of course, the insurance company is interested that we want to give true indemnity. What is true indemnity is if an item is to be repaired, we'll repair it and give. Why should we replace the whole thing? In this case, the item was valued at about 1.6 crores. And obviously the problem was in front of everybody. There is a clear difference of opinion between the insurance surveyor and of course the insurance company on his side and the customer on the other side. And this was not going anywhere. So it was necessary for the broker to come in and then present the case in such a way by giving examples and convincing the claims team that the justification is not there if you are going to supply a brand new machine, you want to repair it and supply, especially a sensitive machinery like a computer. And in this case, the state government agency was putting it to application in a very sensitive, say, state government project, which would carry the private information of the citizens of that state. So if 3 months or 6 months down the line, the server crashes, it would have been a major disaster. Everybody would have been blaming each other at that time. So it was simply unacceptable by any standards for the insurance company to take such a position that just repair, we'll spend a few lakhs, then repair this machine, and then you accept that. That was never possible. In the meanwhile, there was also a possibility of recovering some amount by selling the damaged server by inviting a salvage buyer. So the broker was able to identify a couple of salvage buyers. They went to the site and inspected the machine. Of course, it was not working, but in as is various condition, salvage buyer was able to make an offer, and the continued conversation the broker and the customer had. There was a constant involvement of both the insurance broker and the customer with the insurer. What they did not do was rush to court. They didn't want to sue and then wait for decades and decades. Otherwise, these kind of cases will end up in dispute. Possibly, they might have ended up in arbitration. But again, in marine cargo, arbitration frequently is a challenge. Somebody will take a position that arbitration we will not agree. There are cases where insurance company have taken such a position. But in this case, the customer was fortunate. The insurance company came forward to settle the value of about 70% of the server as an insurance claim. Balance was recovered by the salvage disposal, and almost 90% of the value was recovered. 90% is not 100%. It is not a 100% settlement of the case. But still, what is in focus here is surprise element. There could be thousands and thousands of such cases where this tug of war between the customer and the insurance surveyor along with the insurer, deciding that a machine is repairable or it should be replaced. Something is to be repaired with minor expenses. I know a case in Chennai flood. There was a small SME unit which was manufacturing electronic components, and water was stagnating in that place for about 9 feet for more than 2 days. Insurance surveyor told, and this company was supplying this electronic panel boards to large residential projects and large offices and business premises. So the surveyor took a position: you engage a air gun, you engage a pump and an air gun, you clean up the electronic component by using an air gun. I will pay the hiring charge for the air gun and the labor maybe. I will not allow the entire cost of replacing the panels with the electronic components. Frequently, these kind of differences will occur. So that's the background of this case. This case ended up in almost nearly satisfying. 90% is not bad, as against maybe a 90% of rejection. 90% payment is not bad. Still, 100% is what the customer is entitled. So if this is the background, I would like to ask Mr. Ramesh, from the survey and loss adjustment point of view, do you think the stand of the insurer to say that only repair charges are payable, was that sustainable if this claim did not end up in conciliatory, amicable settlement where it could have gone? Have you handled such cases in the past?
No, you see, as a surveyor and loss adjuster who has absolutely no bias between the two contracting parties, it is always expected of him to make a professional conduct and a professional duty, exercise his professional duty to ensure that there is justice, as per the terms of the contract. So if there is any error of judgment on the part of the surveyor, in the sense that if an item is beyond repairs, but if the surveyor takes a stand that it can be repaired on technical grounds, and to the extent that it can be proved that it is definitely beyond repairs, in fact, even if the surveyor stand was in this particular case, the surveyor stand was that it is repairable, but still, the insurance, the clients have proved that it is not repairable, and the surveyor did not change his stance, but still the insurance company came forward and settled the claims. Therefore, the surveyor's opinion or even the recommendation is without prejudice to the ultimate decision of the underwriters or the insurers, who are the final authority to decide on the liability and the settlement amount as well. And therefore, the surveyor, just the third party independent neutral body who is a legal entity licensed by the IRDA, has to ensure that he lives up to the regulatory expectations, and beyond that, he has to leave it to the parties to decide.
Mr. Ramdas sir, what is your viewpoint about this case? Particularly, the insurance company took a positive decision to conclude the case, to pay the claim to the extent of about 90%, including salvage. What is your opinion, sir? Is it a rare case, or are there cases where the justification is seen the insurance company to decide like this?
So in these electronic cases, at least, first of all, the primary important thing is to appoint a very competent surveyor who understands that. We did have cases wherein it was imported machinery from Japan, and then ultimately the surveyor as well as the insurance company should go by the at least OEM, original equipment manufacturer's advice, whether it is repairable or it is a total loss. There are cases wherein the insurer say that the surveyor, despite getting an OEM opinion that it is not repairable, and it is a very costly equipment of 40-50 crores, he just decides nothing doing, it is my opinion that it can be repaired, and then say gets a quotation from a local repair shop. And the insurance company also is forced, when such a situation comes, and then the insurance company is also forced to settle this based on that, and then allow the insured to go to the consumer forum or arbitration. So it is in these cases it is very essential. At least I would say that at the time of entering into a policy contract itself, we must be there must be something like an SLA, how the claim will be settled based on OEM opinion, or the repairable and non-repairability should be decided by competent people. It is better to be agreed in advance, especially for major high-value electronic equipments and imported machineries, where there are many cases where even the testing, whether it is possible or not, they say they send back the machinery to the original manufacturer in Japan or Germany. And who is going to bear the cost of transporting the repaired, damaged machinery back to that? All these things should be agreed in advance. So the insurance company should also give enough thought before insuring these things. Today, what's happening is whatever comes even on email, with the bare minimum details, the insurance companies are covering this without doing any underwriting, which puts everybody in problem at the time of a claim. So it's better the insurance, if the insurance company is not very conscious, insured should get an SLA, how the claim will be settled would be agreed in advance. That will solve a lot of problems later.
Sir, Mr. Ramdas, you already responded to a question from Mr. K. Subramanian from TVS Motor, Hosur. One more question is asked, which is relevant to the policy documentation. There's been a clamor for policies to be more transparent, more reflective of the correct information, even to the extent of simplification of policy words. Even if you tell customer, you please read the policy, there are most of the customers cannot figure out what the policy conveys because of the complexity of the legal language. It looks like any other complicated legal document. But beyond that, the usual blame on the insurance companies from the customer's point of view is the cliched wording of small print. They always give the denials or exclusions or negative features or warranties in small print. So what do you think, sir? Should it be the effort of the insurance company to convey the limitations of the policy in clearer, more transparent manner, not small print, but possibly reserve a portion of the policy to say that beware, please take caution?
As far as the issue of a small print is concerned, IRDA has even specified the font size in which policy should be printed. So there cannot be any smaller print than that. That is number one. But I agree with you that it could be displayed in a much better manner. In fact, the exclusion should come first. And I have seen international policies where it comes as a story actually. Please note that you will not be covered under these circumstances. Please note that you have to take these things at the time of claim. These are all highlighted earlier, the first portion of the policy itself. So therefore, that would give a better reading to the insured, and it is easily understood also. IRDA is doing their best, and there are committees formed by the General Counsel to look into that. We have a long way to go. I agree that it should be done that way, and at least private companies, private insurance companies should take the lead in coming out with better. I have seen some of the private companies' policies, at least liability policies and burglary policies and householders policies also, where they give a good narrative of what is covered, what is not covered. And industries, it is little difficult to envisage all the problems and say this is not covered, this is not covered. But it could be definitely improved. But I don't agree that the font size is small. That's what TS1 has also raised. This now small print is not there nowadays. Font size is decided, but it is pushed at the end. In fact, exclusions are pushed at the end, which is not correct actually.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. We have a question from Mr. Alex Verghese. I think Mr. Ramesh can respond on this. In the case of the client that you had mentioned, where the description of occupancy in various floors, which were taken up over a period of, let's say, 5-6 years, why was the policy showing it as shed A, shed B, shed C, and why not the whole building? Was there a reason why it was reflected shed-wise separately, sir? In this particular case, what is the reason?
The reason is the building is a multiple occupancy building. There are more than about 5 or 6 companies operating therein.
Okay.
And the space allocation is according to the nomenclature assigned by the owner of the building.
Okay.
And in order to identify the respective areas of work areas of various occupants, and therefore they had assigned the number shed number A, B, C, D, essentially for the purpose of identification and for getting the correspondence or post and mails and then the couriers and other things, and also to sort of record on the lease agreement. What is the extent of the area, and when it was to what extent the what you call the rental agreement binds both the parties and all those agreements between those two parties. So that is the reason the identification was given. And the same thing was transcribed into the policy, where instead of taking the whole 5 sheds occupancy into the policy, unfortunately it was renewed mechanically, and nobody had reviewed the additions over the subsequent years. And then it stayed that way at the time of claim.
Okay.
That was the problem.
Yeah. So the major shift, if I want to recall and then share with the participants, that prior to the year 2000, in the earlier tariff, block-wise description was there. After the tariff was changed from the year 2000, it was one compound, one complex. All the blocks are rated uniformly, and it was sufficient for the customer to mention. Much unlike this case, if it's a factory or one premises where the insured is the owner of the entire premises, there's no need of showing various blocks within the complex separately. You just have to give a N block sum insured for the building separately, for entire plant and machinery without having to give a breakup for plant and machinery separately, and the stocks of all description without giving a breakup if it is within that particular premises, stocks of all description to be given as just one value. That facility has come. If it's one premises, you just give the address of the location and everything inside the premises is covered without having to give separate sheds or separate blocks within the, is that right, sir?
It's absolutely right. That's the way it should be looked at.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in this case, it was taken the other way.
Okay. Yeah. So it's been a fascinating story to listen to experts like Mr. Ramdas and Mr. Ramesh to relate to us the surprises corporates faced when they expected a fair and just settlement of their insurance claims. In one case, it was a matter of cause of loss or proximate cause that went into dispute. By taking the advice from an insurance broker, they were able to bring in a subject matter expert and then establish to an arbitrator that the cause of loss was admissible within the policy, even a standard fire and special perils policy. And in the second case, it was not a very great experience for the customer. A large claim was disputed and rejected because of, you can call it a clerical mistake of not writing the addresses clearly in the policy, not realizing that such a small lapse will end in a 100 crore claim being denied. It's a very unfortunate thing that it happened to the customer. We do not know how many other 1,000 other such cases have been in the market. But this presentation, and the third case where I shared with you a case of marine cargo claim, when there was a tug of war between the insured and the insurance company to decide whether it's a repair basis claim or a total loss claim. Fortunately, it ended in an amicable settlement between the insurer and the insured. There are many such stories where there is a learning experience, painful learning experience for customers where they didn't get a claim, rewarding or enriching learning experience where it ended up positively for the customer, possibly sometimes with the intervention of a good and a well accomplished insurance broker or advisor. Definitely very fair and fair-minded insurance surveyors like you, Mr. Ramesh, been able to see justification or reason in the way the facts are presented to the surveyor. All these cases are there. This is the first of 2 sessions of sharing challenges in commercial claims. Down the line, we'll be having another session. Bharat Re is very happy to host these speak series of sessions where we want to transfer this experience and knowledge to our customers and prospects. In the next episode, we'll have 3 more experts. There will be another colleague who will host the presentation, and 2 more very highly experienced and senior experts from Bharat Re who will be talking to you, sharing more such stories, which will be extraordinarily useful for us to appreciate the outcome of an insurance claim from the backdrop of an insurance policy that the customer would have placed. So I sincerely thank Mr. Ramdas and Mr. Ramesh for having spared more than an hour for this session. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And my sincere thanks to all the participants for having spent their valuable morning hour. Definitely this is a business session, so I'm sure you will feel good that this session is useful to have a new perspective on how insurance claims are to be seen. So thanks to all the participants. Welcome you back for our session 2, in which you'll be meeting 3 more experts to talk to you on these claims. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Q&A be replying separately. There are many questions.
If there are other questions, we'll be sending a reply to them, sir. For paucity of time, we are closing here. We'll be sending a reply to each of the persons who has asked question. We'll come back, and definitely when they log into the next session, they'll be able to raise these questions. We'll be definitely responding in the next session. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
And I request feedback from the participants. You can again write in support@bharatre.in. You can send your feedback, and we'll be very happy to receive an honest response from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.